What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show. I am Christopher Roush, your No Excuses coach, and you're at the place where I help you ditch your tolerations, ditch your excuses in favor of having kick-ass, unstoppable confidence. We're glad that you joined us here, whether you're live on the video cast or on the podcast. Tonight, we have a great show for you, and I'm just going to start off by asking you a question. Are you able to say no to people? Are you able to say no to situations that are not conducive to what it is that you want in life? Saying no is paramount in the fact that we need to be able to grow and prosper from ourselves by saying no to situations that are not conducive to what it is that we want to be doing in our life. So tonight we're going to be talking about that. So I encourage you to take notes. I encourage you to share this episode out. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe to this video, like and subscribe to the channel. There's tons of information on here that can move your attitude and your life forward and build your confidence. No excuses, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm excited to welcome to the Raw and Unscripted Show, Tassos Kotzias. Tassos Kotzias. Welcome to the show, Tassos. Thank you.
Hi, Christopher. Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me here. I'm excited. And let's give some value to our audience today.
Yes. Thank you. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Because as I was going live, I was like, I want to make sure I do this right. And then I had two different thoughts in my head.
No worries. I know it's always challenging a bit, but it's
Tassos. Tassos Kotzias. There we go. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, brother. And you're all the way over in Qatar, right?
Yes, I'm in Qatar. Yeah, closely the other side of the world for you.
The other side of the world. Oh my God, you might win the contest for being the furthest guest. I've had guests from all over the world, but I know you were doing another podcast that I was watching, and the guy said the same thing. And he was in New York. He's like, I think you might be the furthest one. And I'm like, I don't know. I've had people in New Zealand. I've had people from all over the world, but thank you so much for joining us. I know it's early in the morning there. It's late at night here. So it's a beautiful thing about technology that we can join each other here. So my first question for you is a very simple, but yet an impactful one. What do you want most to get across to people tonight? What do you want people listening to this and watching this? What do you want them to walk away feeling and knowing about their self-confidence and their lives?
Well, our subject today is about healthy boundaries, basically, right? And how to say no. And this is a big issue. This is a very big issue for most of the people, also my clients. It's like I can tell you that 80% of all the discussions I have with my clients, either women or men, it's in the end, it's about boundaries. It doesn't mean if it's personal, on a personal base, or on a professional background, or a professional setting, family setting, social setting. Everything is about it's about boundaries, and of course how to say no. So I'm happy I'm here with you today because this is a big issue, and let's get it unwrapped and try to go deep into that. Replying to your question about what would be the, let's say, key takeaways from today's podcast, I guess it's how people can really live the present, because this is very important, when we are setting healthy boundaries. What healthy boundaries are, maybe just to understand, because people maybe not be able to understand what healthy boundaries in. And
Right.
Of course, some actions, some tips, and some tools on how to literally say no, how we can actually do that, right? What do we need to do that? And what do we need to think physically, emotionally, even spiritually in order to say
of course. Yeah. So tell me where in your life you learned about setting boundaries, because I know that's one of the most important things that we can do for our own best interest. I just did a TikTok video on this a little bit ago. What was it for you in your life where you said, hey, listen, I need to set boundaries for myself. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up being a people pleaser to everybody and not to myself.
Yes. Well, you know that this is a growing process, right? And this is an ongoing and evolving process, because it's directly related to the self-confidence that we feel, the confidence that we feel at the specific times of our life. Sometimes we are pumped up, and we are ready to rock and roll, and we are ready to really be there ourselves, our authentic selves, and then we're not scared of anything, we're not nervous about anything, and we can really stand up there when it's needed in any situation. Sometimes, some other times in our lives, we're feeling a bit down, we're feeling a bit maybe slower, let's say in a different pace, maybe we are disconnected with our authentic true self, and that makes a big difference as well. So personally, on my personal journey so far, I went all to these kind of road bumps, if I can say, right? So up and down, highs and lows. But I can tell you that my experiences from young, especially with sports, And of course, a little bit of the military service, because I'm Greek and we have to do a mandatory military service for a couple of years. so,
Wow.
so all these experiences served a little bit for me to be a little bit more, squared in some things, and
Sure.
in a way to set my boundaries and protect myself in different situations, for good or for bad, because you never know. Sometimes, sometimes even setting boundaries, it's a hard. You have to take some hard decisions in the end.
Oh yeah.
This hard decision would mean that maybe you let people down, or maybe you keep distance with people that you may want them to be around, but in the end, at some point, you have to take these difficult decisions.
So, I mean, when you think about personal boundaries, I know for me, that goes back to like knowing my self worth and knowing that I don't have to do everything for everybody else. And I know that comes from a scarcity mindset, because in my life was growing up, I thought I learned the secret to my success was if I could be exactly who I need to be for you, if I know how to be exactly for you, then I didn't have any boundaries. I eliminated my boundaries because I thought success was being a people pleaser. And then I got to the point where I was so frustrated where I really needed to take a step back and say, wow, I don't have to say yes to everything. I have to say yes to what aligns with my values. And that's what I teach my coaching clients is the fact, what are your values? Like getting back to the root. And I love that we go deep on this. I'm not about solving the symptom of a situation. I'm about going to the root. So talk to us about that. I mean, what are some steps that people can sit there and say today that to identify their worthiness? Because I know a lot of people out there don't have that worthiness. What can we do to help people develop that sense of worthiness and to eliminate a lot of the projections that we had from our parents and from our other caretakers in our life that caused us to have that lack of self-confidence?
Wow, that's a challenging question, right? And it's really deep because, because what our experiences, as growing up as children, the families, social setups, schools, education, culture, even in culture, in
Yeah.
Qatar, as here is a
Well,
Muslim
100%.
country. It's a Muslim country. It's a different setup. I grew up in Greece. It's in a more, let's say, liberal way of growing up, and here I see the kids and I see the families in a completely different mentality. So a lot of factors are affecting on how we gain this worthiness and how we value and how we create our values and our beliefs. So we need to work on it. We need to study, maybe we need to discuss a lot. We need to really identify. We need to even meditate, right, for the people that they are closer to this, and to these modalities, and they are feeling comfortable to reach these spaces, right, energetically, of course.
Right.
And because we're talking about energy here and energy shifting, sometimes, I'm a true believer in this energy shifting inside us in order to be able to really identify our values and understand who we are, very important, and then what we want to do and what we want to achieve in the world, etc. So coming back to your question, yes, we need to really get to understand that being a people's pleaser, it will not get us along. It will not get us a long way. It's
Right.
impossible. At some point, we will get either frustrated or depressed or tired or completely burnt out, because
Yeah.
this requires a lot of energy. As you said, I try to please you, I try to please my mom, I try to please my wife, I try to please my kids, I try to please my boss. It's impossible. It's draining. It's draining all your energy. So at some point, we will definitely feel burnout. So what we can do, we need to look. First of all, I think the important thing is the self-reflection. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, who am I? This is the big question. Who am I? What I want to achieve? What is the legacy I want to leave in this world in the end? Right? And then how do I make myself happy? How am I happy? Am I happy
Yeah.
to please others? If this is my value, I'm happy to please others, and I'm very, very deep, very have thought about that deeply, and this is how I connect, and this is who I am. Perfect, fine. It could be this way as well. No judgment at all. It can be this, but 90%, 95% of the situations, it's not like this. So we need to really reflect on ourselves first of all and get this self-awareness in place. I'm sorry, maybe there's a helicopter flying around. I'm not
Tell them to
sure.
be quiet, Tom. I'm recording a
Yeah.
podcast right now. No, I love that. I mean, it's so true. I mean, we have to start with those simple questions, and they might be simple on the surface, but we have to dive deep into that. And, asking ourselves, who am I? And actually, on my other show, The Unfiltered Experience, we just went through a whole series where we talked about that. We talked about our identity. Because so often we think our identity is based on the things that we learned. We know the conditioning process happens between the age of 0 and 5. Right. A lot of our beliefs about ourselves, our worthiness, everything about ourselves, usually happens in that period of time because our parents, usually invoking us, you're stupid, you're ugly, you'll never be this. And then we go through our lives and we find ways to validate that. Oh, see, I'm not that good. My parents told me that, or my teacher said I was stupid. And so we have to break those beliefs and we have to get to the root of who am I? And not in a symptomatic way, but in a deep level. And that's one thing that I experienced when I was in my early 30s. I went to a funeral, and I thought, as I was watching everybody eulogize the person that passed away, I thought to myself, if I died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? And you were talking about legacy, right? And when you think about that, at that point, I thought 10 or 15 people would show up. They'd bring a bunch of alcohol and some Bon Jovi records, and they would talk about all the stupid shit Chris did. Oh my God, remember that time he did this? Remember that time he did that? Oh yeah, he wrote a best-selling book that changed the world. I didn't want the last part of my legacy to be that. And so when I was driving home, it really bugged me. And I thought, who am I? Am I that party guy, or am I this really, am I changing? Am I evolving? What can I do to be really known for that legacy that I want to build? So I went home and I wrote my eulogy. And it was a very powerful experience because it taught me to live in that space intentionally. Right. And so I had to sacrifice. I had to give up. I had to let go of people that no longer serve me. I had to let go of people who were trying to keep me back because they wanted me to stay with them because misery loves company. And so I love that you talk about that because, so oftentimes we do have to wish people well. What is your recommendation for being able to sit there and get to that point to say, you know what, even family, I've had to wish my sister well. Sometimes we have to make those tough decisions. What recommendations do you have for people to be able to make those tough decisions? How do you go through that decision-making process to find, is it in accordance with my values, et cetera? What are some of the recommendations you give your coaching clients to make tough decisions?
Before I go into this question of yours, you will allow me just to share a small experience because I was watching a podcast like a couple of weeks ago with an author of a very interesting book, which is called The Power of Regrets. Very interesting book.
Oh, yeah. I think I've read it.
Yeah,
it's an American. Daniel.
Yes, I don't remember his last name, but he's an American guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Daniel Pink.
Yeah, exactly. So he was saying in the podcast something very interesting, what he just said. And he was saying, like, guys, put your schedule in place and go to funerals. He was like, please, really. He was like, go to funerals. Get these, whenever something happens, something like that, and you need to go, just go. Just go, because this opens up a completely different perception of what you just said, exactly, of who we are, what we want to achieve, right? Which, as you said nicely, which people you want to have around in the end, right?
Yeah,
in the end, when this time comes. So it's very tough. So yes, just I wanted to share because it clicked to me when you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So about how to, let's say, challenge, right, these beliefs that you asked me, how to challenge these beliefs, how to challenge this conditioning, right, from our parents, from school, etc. It's challenging, it's difficult, but there are ways because, first of all, of course, we can ask for some advice. We can ask for some support. We can discuss with our network, maybe just our friends in the beginning. Maybe then it's someone, maybe it's more or more of an expert in a subject, right? But then going deeper to our values and to our beliefs, we need to be open. We need to be open. We need to be open to receive. We need to be open to receive even feedback. We need to be open to read, to study, to hear, to listen, to feel, to sense what is happening. Because unfortunately we are growing up a little bit too rigid, and we're like the horses now that they wear these, right and left,
the
and
blinders,
the blinders, and they just walk in front, and then we don't see what's happening around, and maybe opportunities pass maybe things for us to grow, to develop ourselves, to go on a different level. Because when we're living only on the physical plane, as we say, the physical level of awareness or the physical level of well-being, we really need to go to a mental, emotional, and spiritual level. So there are steps that we need to do there. So we can challenge our beliefs. We can challenge our values. We can open up and discuss openly with our friends or with our peers. What do you think about love? What do you think about compassion? What do you think about empathy? What does empathy means to me? What does empathy means to you? Because we all have different translations anyway, because of these conditioning, because of these beliefs, because of these values, right? And I will share with you a personal example and a very personal situation, in our family. We have a son and a daughter, right? Our daughter, which is Maya, she's 7 years old now. She's adopted. So we adopted her from Ethiopia, right? And we adopted her exactly when she was 1 year and a half. So you said about this, you mentioned about this window of opportunities, I call it, which is literally from 1 year old up to 5, maybe 6 year old for the kids, to really work on the personality, work on their self-worth, work on their self-image, work on their on their resilience, even the resilience, because for me resilience is also a very, very important value. So we are very, very conscious with my wife how we can help and we can support the child, which is not part of our family, it's not our blood, let's say, right? Because we say this, how we can support this child with this already embedded experience, even if she was only 1 year and a half. She was in orphanage, right? So imagine the tough situations, because even 1 year and a half, 18 months old, I'm telling you, we see reactions and we see behaviors that we're just saying. I'm looking at my wife and say, where did this come from?
Where the trauma, the ingrained trauma, right?
Yes, and then we need to really be there, to work around it. So yes, a support network is very important. Opening up discussions about things that we need to challenge ourselves. But I think the most important is we really need to be open to the unknown, and we really need to be curious. Because in the end, like coaching is about curiosity, and how you do the right curious questions.
It is. And I love it that you shared that. I appreciate that, because there's so oftentimes we don't realize that, the trauma that could be taking place in utero, 9 months while the baby's inside the mother, you don't know what kind of stress, all that stuff translates into the baby. And then the baby's born. And if there's traumatic experiences like being in an orphanage, a lot of that stuff, that fear-based conditioning can come in and reside in it even before they can communicate. The studies are amazing. I studied child psychology for a while, because as I was discovering myself, I kept going back younger and younger, because I was like, okay, where did we get fucked up at? And I literally thought it was when we were teenagers. I'm like, okay, it's probably when we're teenagers. We're kind of still being kids. We're trying to go to be adults. And then as I kept digging and digging and digging, they were talking about the conditioning, the agreements that we make. The agreements that we make is usually between 1 and 5 years old. So based on that situation, you said a word in there that I really want to kind of dig into. You said empathy. And so oftentimes, if we're learning to say no, and if we're determining that people aren't going to be in our lives anymore, we're drawing those boundaries, as we talked about at the top of the show. What are your thoughts on being able to find empathy and forgiveness for the people that wronged us, right? So when we look back on our past and our parents, told us that we were worthless, told us we were stupid and shitheads and all this other stuff, how can we realize that they weren't doing it intentionally? Because back in the days when you and I were kids, what was the big teaching thing? It was negative reinforcement. It was like, oh, nobody's ever going to love you if you're fat. So they tried to scare us into doing something to change, when they realized that they didn't realize that they were actually making things worse. I've seen so many people have to rewrite those scripts that their parents told them, because their parents didn't know any better. They didn't have Google and YouTube, but they didn't have all the resources that we have today. What are your thoughts on for people to be able to sit there and say, I am worthy, I am love, I am peace, and I need to find a way to forgive and have empathy for my parents, for they didn't know? What are some steps that you would recommend to people listening and watching right now to find that empathy and forgiveness for perhaps themselves, maybe some things that they've done, but especially for people who have wronged them in the past, so they can stop blaming and they can start having that curious mind, like you said, having that open mind to be able to say, today is a new day. Today is, the whiteboard is erased, and today I get to write my beliefs. What are some recommendations for that?
Yeah. Letting go is one of them, right? And letting go is very, I know it's not easy to do. It's
No.
not easy to do. But the weights that we carry, it's heavy. All these
Yeah.
weights are very heavy sometimes, right? So we need to identify that, and we need to fly. So how can we fly? How can we fly? We can only fly if we don't have the weights. It's like the hot air balloons, that they are when they are grounded on the ground, where they have the anchor and they have these big sands of bag. Imagine, this, but especially in the past, holding them down. So you need to let go. You need to release all this in order to really fly. And then, of course, it really depends on if you're willing to change, right? Are we willing to change? Because if we're not
Bingo.
willing to change, if we're not willing to change, whatever you, Christopher, me, Tasso say to someone as a coach, let's say, it's not going to happen. It will
Yeah.
never happen if the individual is not ready to change. If the
Nothing like
individual is,
this.
yes, of course, if the individual is not ready, to take these hard choices for himself, first of all, or for herself, then nothing will happen. And of course, regrets. We discussed about regrets, right? Regrets is big thing. We all make mistakes. You said about, the mistakes of our fathers, the mistakes of our grandparents, and all that. Yeah, of course. What about us? We make mistakes every day.
Oh yeah. I've made a
So,
shitload.
how can how can we manage our mistakes first? How can forgive ourselves first, and then we go and forgive our fathers and our parents and our grandparents and the society and the politicians and this and all the rest that we
Oh
we are
boy.
there to
That's a long
we are
list.
yes, we are there to blame. So for me, yes, it's how we manage regrets. Very important for ourselves first of all, because if we learn how to manage our own regrets, then we can forgive also others. Then we can, and I see and accept that yes, that these are human beings as well, and maybe they were coming maybe from a place of love sometimes. But as you
Yeah.
said, maybe they didn't know. This is what they knew. They didn't have the education. They didn't have the resources maybe, to support us. But was love there or not? Because if love was not there, then we have a deeper issue, then we
Hmm.
have a much deeper issue, right? If love was not there, if love was there, then it's a little bit easier. Then it's a little bit easier, and we need to identify that.
It's true. It's true. And I love what you're saying here because I mean, for me, empathy and forgiveness were huge for me. I was, I don't know if you know my story, but I'll give you the nutshell version of it. At 13 years old in the seventh grade, I became homeless. And for 4 years, I lived in a station wagon. I tried to kill myself twice. Unfortunately, I sucked at it. I went through a lot of tough stuff. And my mother didn't make the right decisions. She didn't put me first. She put her animals first. She put herself first. And so there was anger and animosity towards her. There was resentment in a certain aspect, not overwhelming like my sister. My sister like hated my mother and thought that she should be dead. I didn't understand. I was like, why couldn't you put me first? I'm your kid. Like I should be the most important person in the world aside from yourself. And so as I've gone on my journey, I drank to avoid it. I did other things to avoid it. But then it occurred to me as I was writing my book, I've actually been writing my life story for the last 3 years. And I thought about it. I'm like, how can I find empathy and forgiveness from my mother? Because she would tell me I'm doing the best I could. I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the best I can. And she told me that when I was born, she was going to place me for adoption. And I asked her when she told me that in my 30s. And I said, well, why didn't you? And she said, well, when you were born, they passed you to me and they said, do you want to see him? And so I said, sure. And so they laid you on my chest. And I just looked at you and I said, it's just you and me, kid. And that's actually the title of my book. It's just you and me, kid. And so when she said she did the best with what she could, okay, I'm like, how can I find that to be true? Because I personally didn't think she did the best that she could. I'm like, you had 18 cats and 4 dogs in a car instead of your kid. You didn't feed your kid first. You fed the cats first. And so it dawned on me, if I had gone through all the experiences that my mother did, being raised by, young parents back in the 40s, she was born in 1942. What was going on, Chris, in 1942? There was a world war. There was the Great Depression. There was all these different things that are going on. Women weren't, treated as equal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If I had been born at that time to those young parents who got divorced she was 4 years old and gone through all of the experiences that she did, might I be like her? And at first, Tassos, I wanted to say no. I would not have been like her because I would have seen what other people were doing and I would have said no. But I'm like, yeah, I would have. If I would have been her, those were the experiences that she needed to have. And those experiences that she had, created the experiences that I needed to have for me to be the person that I am today. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I had everything easy. I would probably be some fuck up. I would probably, because I was going downhill at the age of 13. I started doing drugs and I started fighting. All my life, I was bullied. I was picked on. I was beaten. So when I became 13, started becoming a man, I was like, F this shit. And I was like, I'm going to start punching people. And so I think, and I really believe this, I don't even think, I believe that if I had a normal childhood, I probably would have been worse than having that experience. So I found appreciation and thanks for all the experiences that I had that were rough. I wouldn't want to go back and repeat them, but they helped me become the person I am today because you said that word, open. I've always been open. What can I do to learn? How can I take responsibility for this? And I've immersed myself in books and coaching and masterminds, et cetera, because I've always been hungry to find out how can I be the best person that I could be for myself. And so that's the way I found that empathy and forgiveness. But one of the questions I want to ask for you when we're thinking about this is the negative self-talk, right? Like you said, being open and everything else, but so oftentimes our own worst enemy is the conversation that we're having up in here. Oh, I always screw up. I'll never find the relationship, et cetera, et cetera. What do you advise people to change that negative chatter that's going on in their head to literally rewrite the belief system that they have for themselves so that their opportunities can shift and they can see things as opportunities rather than problems?
Yeah, negative talk is another big one, unfortunately. Yeah, because our brains are wired like this, and out of nature, our brains are wired, to protect us. Our brains are wired to make us feel safe and comfortable. And usually we are always, for like thousands of years now, we are wired how to protect ourselves from a negative situation, from a threat. Right. So when we're wired to protect ourselves from a threat, we have to think negatively, and we're thinking negatively. Oh, what will I do if this happens, or what this will happen, and I need to do something. I need to protect myself. I need to protect my family. And what if this happened? And what if this? And what if that? Right. So we always think negatively, unfortunately. So this is very difficult to rewire. However, this is part of the evolution. So this is what I was discussing before about the physical, the mental, emotional, and spiritual, right? If you're thinking, if someone is very strong mentally on the mental processes, then I have to say that 90% it will be really negative talk there. But if someone starts thinking more with the heart, more emotionally, and they are starting connecting also spiritually, or starting connecting with other people, other even the nature, let's say, on a different level, then this negative talk slows down. And it's mindfulness here. Mindfulness can play an important role here. And I'm not talking about meditation or, these more advanced practices, I'm talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness being in the present, I'm here in a garden, actually, right? This is a real setup. So what I just thought here is that, okay, I go and I smell the flower. This is mindfulness. It's not about meditation, What makes you feel nice? I walk just barefoot on the grass, for example. Walk barefoot in the grass. This immediately calms down the negative talk, because it connects us with our source. It connects us with the nature. This is our source, the nature. So the more we are connected with the nature, with the earth, with the people that we love, the less negative talk we have. And this is something that we need to think every day, every minute, every second of our lives, of our days, from the morning we wake up until the evening when we go to bed, and we close our eyes and we say, now I need to sleep calmly. I need to sleep, peacefully, and I need to get some rest. Right? I know, of course, it's not easy. It's hard days. We have hard days. We have challenging tasks. Every day we have to run here and there. We have to make a living. We have to protect our kids. We have to make to work and make some money. To feed our families. It's not easy. It's not easy. But once we start working on this shift, magic happens. It takes time. Yeah, of course, it takes time. Nothing happens from one day to the other. Right, but it's an ongoing process. It's an evolution, and I really appreciate your story, and I really appreciate your experiences there, because, as you said, had you gone through these very challenging situations yourself, you wouldn't be the person that you're now. You see what you said? This is what you said. So this is always some spiritually. If you think of it spiritually, maybe this is why we are here. Because we need to go through a specific journey in order to really identify ourselves, help other people, share love, have impact, create whatever is our mission or whatever is our values and our mission in the end.
It's so true. It's so true. Actually, I have a tattoo. I'll try to show you right here. It says, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger.
Exactly.
Because I literally got to that point in 2016. I was going through a very, very challenging time in my life. And I always say every day is a new day, and what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. I'm not a very religious person. I'm a very spiritual person. I've become that way, but I've just always had the perspective, like every day we wake up, that's kind of an awakening. That's a brand new day. Yesterday is not physically there. It's electrical energy in our brain. Tomorrow isn't here. We don't know if it's going to come or not. So I love how you talk about being in the moment and being that grounded and being aware, because for me, it's about gratitude, right? When I sit there and I look at, I'm grateful for this challenge. Because when have I learned and grown the most? When we look back on our life, when have we learned and grown the most? When things were easy or when things were challenging? Joseph Campbell talks about it in The Hero's Journey. Are you familiar with Joseph Campbell?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The Hero's Journey? Yeah. Anybody watching this or listening to this, I encourage you to go to YouTube and type in Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. It's a phenomenal exploration of how we go through the peaks and the valleys. I mean, if we want to go and see a beautiful vista, what do we have to do? We have to climb and we have to sweat and we have to get dinged up. And once we get to that vista, we go, boy, this was worth it. Look at how beautiful this is. And the same thing applies to life. And I love your perspective on that. Like, stop and smell and be present, because for me, it's gratitude. Finding gratitude in the challenge, because the challenges are what make us who we are today. It's not the easy stuff. So when we're in this challenge, we can ask ourselves a question. I love asking questions. Is like, what am I supposed to be learning from this? Instead of like, why does this always happen to me? And God damn it, this fucking sucks. And everybody else is doing that. And we compare ourselves, and we have that belief system. Like, when am I going to get mine? And I do that too sometimes. But if I could just sit there and say, wow, I'm so grateful for all the experiences that I'm having, because I know that life is happening for me and not to me. And I know that everything that's happened and everything that's happening is preparing me for what's next. And I can look back on my life and think, okay, when I started my corporate career, I went through some challenges in different jobs. I was in construction, I was in telemarketing, I was in fast food, I did blah, 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 blah. But all of those experiences, once I got into corporate, helped me with customer service, helped me with communication, helped me with sales. All of that shit prepared me for that. What was next? Everything that happened in corporate has prepared me for what's happening now. And so when we shift that perspective, like what you're talking about, it's not going to be easy, but the other side of it, it's going to be fucking worth it. And that's what I tell people. No, it's not going to be easy. It took you 50 years to get here. It took you 40 years to get here. It took you 60 years to get here. Give it a little bit of time. And I tell people, give it 3 years. If you're serious, like you said, being open, and you want to change, and you're eager about that adventure, and you're eager about that exploration, especially now with Google and YouTube and ChatGPT, there's literally no excuse not to be able to go out there and find the information, find the videos, find people who have done it before. Success leaves clues, so we can actually go back and repeat what other people have done. There's so much information out there. There's literally no excuse. But you said that key important situation, Tassos, is the fact that we have to be open and ready and willing. And to change that negative conditioning and that negative self-talk, I give people this advice: eliminate 2 words from your vocabulary: always and never. Always and never. I always screw up and I never do. No, that's bullshit. Because when you tell yourself that, your reticular activation system in your brain goes, oh, see, I did it again. Oh, see, I did it again. Oh, there I go again. See, I am stupid. See, I do fuck up every relationship. But instead, if we could sit there and say, what am I supposed to be learning from this? And is this getting me closer to or further from my stated goal? And that's another powerful question. We're about to make a decision. We're staying in a relationship that's not conducive to what it is that we're supposed to be really deserving in life. Is this getting me closer to my stated goal of being happy and finding inner peace and finding true love? No. Okay, what decision do I need to make next? I need to have a conversation. I need to get counseling. I need to get help. And if that doesn't work, then I need to leave the situation. What do you think about questions? What are like some key questions in your life, perhaps that you've asked yourself or that you ask your coaching clients, that get them to have that bigger shift? I love questions.
I would share with you an exercise that I usually ask my first-time clients to do. So I'm happy to share with our audience, because it may really help their lives. It may really shift their lives, make this shift what you're talking about, right? So, and by the way, parentheses, the always and the never words that you mentioned is basically the words that determine how depressed we are. really, because
Yeah.
if we, as you said nicely, if we always say always or never, right, and we're wired every day with these two notions, always or never, that means that we are completely depressed. We are already depressed.
Yeah.
And if we are not depressed, we're going that way fast. So I agree totally with you. We need to eliminate the always and the never. Now, coming back to the exercise. So the exercise is as follows. It's very simple, but very hard at the same time.
I
Very
love it. I
hard
love it.
at the same time. So let's say that you have one piece of paper, and you split it in two. So on the left side of the paper, depending how you're writing, because if you're Arab or Chinese, you write from right to left.
Yep.
So,
I learned that the hard way.
you see, we have to be open. So,
Yep.
on the one part of the page, you start writing. After some thought, after some some time being alone, you start writing what you think are the most important things for you. So, for example, maybe it's something about your family, maybe it's something about yourself, for your self-care, for example, maybe it's something about your profession, your career, and promotion, whatever it is. What's something that you need to write a book, for example, or you need to to learn a martial art or something, whatever it is that what this could be. So you write there and you say, okay, number one, most important thing for me is XYZ. Number two, number three, number five. Maybe you write 10, 15, 20. Try to narrow them down to, let's say, 5. We don't
Yeah.
really need more. We don't really need more in our lives. And the Pareto 80-20.
Yep.
The 80-20 anyway, meaning. So let's work around that. So let's say
Sure.
we have 5. We end up with 5 most important things that if we change, they will create a big impact in our lives, a big shift. Now, the challenging part. On the other side of the paper, next to each of these 5 important things for us, we have to write the why.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Love the why.
why is this important? Why is it important for me to write a book? Why is it important for me to go on this 1 year, let's say, journey around the world? Why is it important for me to climb Mount Everest? Why is it important for me, to find the most loving wife on earth? Why is it important for me to raise my kids, as per my values and my beliefs? I don't know what to go for them to the university or have a master's degree or whatever, So why? Because the why is really the challenging part. Because
Right.
if we know the why, and you will discover, and I'm doing that on let's say every maybe 6 months, right? So I go back and reflect, and I say, okay, is this why still there, or should I change this?
Yeah.
Is this still the most important thing for me, or should I change? This is a constant assessment that you need to do. So once you have the why in place, then you have the focus. When you have the focus, the energy goes there. And the energy means your time, your investment, your money, your boundaries, coming back to the boundaries,
Right.
because then it's clear to you what is important and why it's important. So this is where boundaries come in place perfectly, just to connect it with our original introduction here.
I love that. I love that. And what you're talking about. And I just want to acknowledge everybody that's in the house. We got Robert in the house. We got Serena in the house. We got my beautiful friend Mary Kay in the house, all the way from Canada. Thank you guys all for being here. I know we got some other people watching and listening who haven't commented, but thank you guys all for being here. And what you're talking about is so important, because I tell people the simplicity and the complexity of, when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. And that what we need is leverage in our life. Leverage causes things to move. You look at a big rock. We've seen it all in the cartoon. You need a big rock. You can't just push it. But what do? You go get a big, long lever, and then you can move that rock. And that's the same thing in life. When you have that leverage, you can change what it is that you're doing. And I've had so many people tell me, like, Chris, that sounds easy for you. You're Chris, you're always so positive. You're always so this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Actually not. And I've gone through hell to get to this point in my life. I've read thousands of books. I've watched thousands of hours of YouTube videos. I've had multiple conversations with people. That's why I do half the reason why I started broadcasting 10 years ago and doing interview shows was, oh, wow, I could spend an hour talking to really intelligent people and ask them questions on what it is that they do to get successful. And so I've invested that time and energy. And so many times people will tell me, well, Chris, I'm doing the best I can. And I'm like, is your best really your best? And that caused me to actually look within myself years ago, probably about 6 or 7 years ago now. It's time's flying. I came back from work. I used to be in corporate, much like yourself. And I came home from corporate and I was putting my keys and my wallet up on my dresser. And I talked to myself out loud. I think it's a great idea because my outside voice is usually smarter than my inside voice. And I've literally found that out. Like the outside voice was like, Chris, what the fuck are you thinking? Like, really, don't be stupid. My inside voice was, come on. And so I literally said out loud, I said, I did the best I could. Or no, actually, I said that inside. I said, well, I did the best I could. And my outside voice said, really, Chris? And I swear to God, really, Chris, that was your best? Like if somebody had a gun to your head, was that really your best? If you had a camera crew following you around and you were trying to demonstrate your best, was that really your best? Or are you just trying to give yourself a get out of jail card? Because again, going back to that childhood conditioning, Tassos, did you do the best you could? Yeah, I did. Okay, we'll do better next time. That's all we heard. Chris, did you do your best? Yeah, we'll do better next time. It's like nobody ever quantifies or holds us accountable to say, okay, what was your effort here? What are some things that you can do different to become your best? And so I challenge people, when you think you're doing the best you can, if you had enough leverage in your life, then would things change? Would things be different? And sometimes that's why we have to hit rock bottom. We have to hit that rock bottom because now we've got enough pressure. Now we've got enough overwhelm. Now we've got enough stress in our life to say, I can't do this anymore. And one of the other questions I invite people to consider is, when will I have had enough? When will I have had enough? And I talk to people all day, every day, coaching clients, prospective coaching clients, and they're like, well, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And we talk about tolerations or the same things as boundaries. And like, when will you have had enough? Well, geez, Chris, that's a great question. I'm like, you're going to get there. It may take 6 months. It may take 6 years, but eventually, if you do not change what it is that you were doing, you will have had enough and you will blow up. And then you'll look back on your life and go, wow, 6 years ago, I could have changed this shit, but I didn't. And so I invite people to find that leverage. And I'll give you a quick example, and I'm going to ask you a question about that. So I had somebody wanting to coach with me recently, and I told them what it was to work with me, and they said, oh my God. And I said, well, wait a minute. Let me ask you a question. If I asked you to go out there and raise $10,000 in the next 7 days, and it can't be illegal, immoral, or unethical, I said, would you do it? And they said, oh my God, Chris, if I had $10,000, I could work with you. And I said, okay. I said, who's the person you love the most in your life? My son. I'll give you an example that was recent. What's your son's name? Doug. How old is Doug? 9. On a scale of 1 to 10, because I like to quantify things, and you can never pick 7. You can never pick 7. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love Doug? 10. How much would you be willing to do for Doug? Would you take a bullet for Doug? Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to go dark. And I was telling this to this person. So I'm going to go dark because sometimes things change. We get a cancer diagnosis. We get a diabetes diagnosis. I've seen it current time with people I know. Somebody just got a diabetes diagnosis and they're changing all of their stuff. And I'm like, all you had to do was change that shit a fucking few years ago and you wouldn't be almost having an amputation. So I said, I'm going to go dark. When you come home tomorrow, you're going to walk in the door and Doug's going to be sitting on a chair right in the front door. She's like, okay. And I said, standing next to Doug is going to be a gentleman that you do not know who's going to have a 9mm pistol pointed at Doug's head. And he's going to look at you and he's going to say, you need to raise $10,000 in the next 7 days. It can't be illegal, immoral, or unethical. I said, now, madam, what do you do? And every time I get this, I would do it. And I'm like, okay, what would you do? I would sell this. I would ask for this. I would do a GoFundMe. I would do blah, 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 blah. Solution, resource. And I said, okay, what shifted? You just told me 5 minutes ago you couldn't do it, and now you're finding the leverage. You would do it. You would sacrifice. You would go out there and give your blood, sweat, and tears. Talk to us about that. When people say they're doing their best, Tassos, what can we do to inspire them to dig deeper, to find that inner warrior within themselves to say, you know what, I can do more. I can do more. I can do more, without obviously grinding themselves into a pulp. But what are some recommendations to get people to be inspired to find that leverage before they hit rock bottom?
Christopher, thank you for sharing. This was a very powerful example what you just gave here. Very, very powerful.
Some people don't like it. Some people get mad at me, but I don't care.
No, this is very powerful. I appreciate that. Look, doing the best, doing the best we can is directly connected with what we discussed before about what is the most important thing for us. As you said, is the most important thing in your life your son and the life of your son. Then you have to do it. So in the end, if it's about health, for example, we have the example of, I cannot lose weight, I'm overweight, how I can do that, I cannot do it, I go to the gym and it doesn't happen, and all this. So who's to blame there? Is the trainer? Is it myself? maybe it's my self-discipline,
Yeah.
maybe it's my self-image, maybe it's that I don't put the effort, right? So what is happening there? So it's once we have identified, that's why we need to do this exercise and identify really what is the most important thing, because when we really know that deep down inside our hearts, then we will do the effort, then we will put the effort. Otherwise we will not put the effort. It's very clear to me. So that's why I shared this exercise, right? Because it can really give value. It can really give value, to the audience and to the listeners, to the attendees of the show, right? Because once we start working on ourselves on that level, then things shift. Then we say, okay, now I know what I need to do. And then we find the how. Then we go and raise them in this money that you mentioned. Then we go and we start searching what is happening, which resources we have, and what we can use. Then we are becoming curious about this. I think this is the answer. I think it's simple, but at the same time, as we said, very challenging. But once we reach there, but because you mentioned about health, right? So what do I need to do? Do I need to have a knock wood, a heart attack before I change my habits? Before I change my nutrition, my diet, my exercise, the place that I live, the air that I breathe? Because
So true.
sooner or later something will happen. So if we don't do it ourselves, right? You want to call it the universe, you want to call it God, you want to call it whatever, it will come, and it will put us a place of judgment. Yeah, a judgment saying, look guys, now it's your time. Now you have to decide. You couldn't decide by yourself so far. Now you need to decide. Take a peek.
It's so, it's so true.
choice.
I literally just had that experience myself. I've talked about that. My goal in life is to live long enough to see my son get married and have kids, or whatever life choice he makes. My son is going to be 7 years old at the end of the month. I'm going to be 55 next February. So I started off late. So when I start doing the math, it's like, wow, I got to live another 20 or 30 years in order to make that happen. And I want to be there. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10. But then I realized, and for the most part, I'm healthy. I go through ebbs and flows sometimes where I eat a little bad or I drink a little more. And it was a couple of weeks ago when I sat there and I was taking a drink and I was watching a video. It just popped up on my YouTube because things pop up when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Exactly. And it was Andrew Huberman was talking about the impacts of alcohol on your system. And so I thought, let me watch this. And he was talking about acetyl alcohol, blah, 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 and how it is poison and how it's like the number one cancer causing thing. And I was like, wow, everybody in my family's died of cancer. And as I'm taking a drink of this vodka and orange juice with a little 7-Up, it's so good. I was like, I'm literally pouring poison into my body in one hand, and on the other hand saying, I want to live another 30 years. Yeah. That's hypocrisy, Chris. That's stupidity, Chris. You sit there and preach to people. And so I decided to quit drinking. I've quit drinking before, but I always have an end date. Like, I'm going to quit drinking for 3 months. I'm going to quit drinking for 75 days, whatever. So I just decided I'm going to quit drinking with no end date. Now, I don't think I'm going to quit drinking for the rest of my life. I may or may not, but I know for right now I've quit because that's the bigger why. And I think that's the leverage we need to have. Man, I could talk to you for hours. We've already been going for 47 minutes. I want one more question to ask you. And I want to talk about this before we wrap up. You talk about the HEART method in a few minutes. Talk to us about what that HEART method is, because I love the acronym and I love what it means to what you provide for your coaching clients.
Thank you for giving me this chance, Christopher. So yes, the HEART method is, as you said, an acronym which comes from from how person, individual can become holistic, empowered, accepted, resilient, and transformed in the end. Because for me, and if you during my journey, I've developed these values for myself as well. I've discovered that these values are also important, and so this is what I want to pass also to my clients. How they can become holistic on an everyday, on their lives every day. And what it means holistic means physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, financial, all this together. How this holistic approach and holistic routines and habits and actions on a daily basis can provide them the empowerment they need, how they can become empowered through that, so that they raise their self-confidence, they raise their self-esteem, they raise their self-worth. because once they do this is reflected to the outer world. This is radiated to the other world. So people around them, and first of all from themselves, they will start feeling the acceptance. They will start feeling that yes, they are accepted. Yes, they're recognized. Yes, they are appreciated for who they are, for what they are doing. And then one builds on the other. Once you have empowerment with acceptance, then resilience is coming. Because what resilience means? It means how we can endure hard situation, challenging situation, yes, in difficult times, for long term. This is the definition of resilience in the end. So do we want that or do we don't want that? If we want that, we need to go through this process. Right? If we want that, we need to train in the gym for 10 years. If we want that, we need to read 1,000 books if we want to achieve something. If we want the resilience, we need to be disciplined, and we need to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 6 or 7, whatever someone wants to achieve, and do the things that they want to do. And then through all these steps, being holistic, getting the empowerment, the acceptance, receive the acceptance, and becoming resilient, transformation comes.
Yes.
So that's it basically. So then you're looking on yourself and you say, okay, I started here and I have reached there, right? And this journey, was it satisfying journey? Of course, it's a transformation, So this is what we want to achieve for every person. And this is my mission, right? As well, throughout these years, I've discovered that this is my mission. How can I support? Because I was going through this journey, and I'm still going through this journey. How I can also serve and provide, give impact, and and bring value to the world.
Tassos, I love you. I think it's we've had an awesome conversation tonight. We could talk forever. I want to respect everybody's time. I try to keep the show to under an hour, but where can people get a hold of you to continue the conversation, to learn more about your coaching and to learn more about yourself?
They can find me in my website, which is basically my name. Thank you for showing that. Is TASSOSKOTZIAS.com, TassosKotzias.com, right? And of course, there's social media, LinkedIn profile. All the profiles are there, and so I will be happy to reach, and I'll be happy to offer also to your listeners a 30 minutes free consultation call or free discovery call. Name it. They can name it however they like. They basically, it's get to know each other, get the chemistry, and maybe this half an hour call can really shift their lives, because I've seen things happening. I've seen magic happening even in 15 minutes with a training, with a discussion basically, or with a coaching discussion.
It's so true. I've given out complimentary coaching sessions as well on podcasts I've been interviewed at, and I did do it out of the goodness of my heart. I know sometimes it converts to a coaching client, but in the same way, I see people like have that aha moment, and I send them off. They maybe can't afford the coaching, but I see them have that transition. So I encourage all you guys listening and watching. I'll make sure it's in the show notes. You guys can reach out to them and have that exploration, because when you take action and you start telling God, source, universe, whatever you believe in, that I'm ready, the teacher appears, and here is the teacher. So Tassos, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to put you backstage for a second. Don't go anywhere, because I still want to have a chat with you. I'm just going to end out the show real quick, and then I'll be right with you. Thank you, sir. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. If you came into this broadcast halfway through, go back to the beginning. I promise you, we start fresh right off talking about boundaries, and throughout the entire conversation is all about ending your limiting beliefs, how to change your perspective from being a victim to being a victor. All of that is your choice. Wherever you're at in your life, if you decide to continue to bitch, piss, and moan, hope, wish, and pray that someday, show me where someday is on a calendar, ladies and gentlemen, that someday something's going to change, I encourage you to shift your belief now and ask yourself that question. What am I supposed to be learning from this? How can I grow from this experience? What do I need to let go of that is not aligned with my bigger why? Tassos talked about that. What's your why? When you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. Again, if you get a cancer diagnosis tomorrow, what are you going to do? You're going to continue to drink alcohol and eat bonbons? No, you're going to start looking like, what do I have to drink? Oh, vegetable juice or protein shakes or whatever it might be. You have to have that leverage in your life now. Otherwise, what are you going to have? Regret. There's a book out there, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. I should get a fucking $1 for every time I recommend this book. I'd be a millionaire. The 5 Regrets of the Dying. It's a hospice nurse who sat with people who were dying, and she determined that the number one regret of the dying was that. And they're looking back on their life. They're dying. They literally have no more tomorrows necessarily. And they realize, I lived the life I was told to live. I lived the life I thought I was supposed to live. I didn't live the life I wanted to live. I didn't take that chance to go after my dream. I didn't take that risk to end that relationship that I knew was not in my best interest, but I continued doing it. You, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, have that choice right now. Is it easy? No, fuck no. It hurts. It sucks. But guess what? Envision yourself 3 years down the road. Oh my God, Chris, 3 years, really? Yeah. If it's taken you 40 years to get here, perhaps you can invest 3 years to go on the other side of all this. If I leave this relationship, if I leave this job, if I start my business, 3 years from now, I can look back on this and go, that was the greatest moment of my life. When I got let go from my corporate job, November 7th, 2019, I was crushed. And now I look back at it, I'm like, it was the greatest gift ever. Was it easy? No. Was it challenging? Yeah. I had to go through identity crisis. I had to figure out who I was again. I had to really get serious and honest with my own advice and say, Chris, this is happening for you, not to you. This is your time to fly. Do not look in the rearview mirror going, oh, I wish. Don't look at it with a scarcity mindset. Look at it with an opportunity. What am I going to gain from this? How can I apply my best? How can I make that vision for myself in 3 years mean what it's supposed to mean? And as you go through that, be inspired by the challenge, be inspired by the cuts and the scrapes and the dings and the dangs and everything else, because it is all making you stronger. What doesn't kill you always makes you stronger. I invite you guys listening to the podcast, watching it. I'm really growing my YouTube channel, and I'm doing shorts all the time. I'm doing tons of videos, inspirational videos. These podcast videos are on there. YouTube.com/the Christopher Rausch, RAUSCH. You can go to noexcusescoach.com. You can find it there as well. But go there. I promise you're going to get tons and tons and tons of value. I've been doing this show for 3 years. We're on episode number 237. We have the unfiltered experience there. I promise you, go there, subscribe to the channel, like this video, make some comments, support me in supporting you. Come back here next Tuesday live for the video cast every week, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And next week, it's going to be a solo show. So it's just going to be me and you. So if you have any ideas of what you want me to talk about, send me an email, info@noexcusescoach.com. Find me on social media and say, hey, Chris, I'd love for you to talk about this. Otherwise, I'll come up with something, and I promise you it will be of value and it'll be something that you can implement today. So go and connect with Tassos. I love you guys. We'll see you here next time on the Raw and Unscripted Show. Go out there and be beautiful and be unstoppable.